the underestimated recruit. The Galactic Military Academy orbited the planet Zentera Prime like a steel fortress, its massive structure housing over 10,000 cadets from 47 different species. Commander Vrath of the Corvani Empire stood at the observation deck, his forearms crossed as he watched the latest batch of recruits file through the processing center. His crimson scales gleamed under the artificial lighting, and his yellow eyes tracked each newcomer with the precision of a predator evaluating prey. "Another season, another disappointment," muttered Lieutenant Kell, a towering Breketh whose rocky exterior made him look like a walking mountain. "Look at them. Soft. Weak. The coalition standards have fallen." Vratha's mandibles clicked in agreement. The Academy had once been reserved for the elite, for species that had proven themselves in galactic conflicts. Now, political pressure forced them to accept recruits from newer coalition members, including species that had barely achieved interstellar travel. His gaze settled on a particular figure in the processing line, and his eyes narrowed. "Is that a human?" he asked, disgust dripping from every syllable. Kel consulted his data pad, his massive fingers somehow managing the delicate interface. "Yes, Commander. Sarah Chin from Earth. Age 24 in their years. Physical assessment scores are abysmal. She barely meets the minimum requirements for admission." The human in question stood barely 5.5 feet tall, her frame slight compared to the muscular aliens surrounding her. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, brown eyes that seemed too large for her pale face, and a posture that suggested exhaustion. Her standard-issue uniform hung loosely on her body, and she carried her equipment bag as if it weighed more than she did. "Another charity case," Vrath spat. "The humans have been coalition members for only 20 years, and already they presume to send their weakest to our academy. This is an insult. Should I flag her file for immediate review?" Kell asked, his tone hopeful. They both knew what that meant. A bureaucratic process that would result in her dismissal within days. Vrath considered it, then shook his head. "No. Let her experience firsthand why humans do not belong here. When she fails, and she will fail, it will send a message to Earth that the Academy is not a playground for fragile species." Below them, Sarah Chin completed her processing and was assigned to Training Group 7, a collection of cadets that included 3 Corvani, 2 Breketh, for Zentrans whose skin shimmered with bioluminescence, and now 1 human. The Corvani recruits, each standing over 7 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel, looked at her with barely concealed contempt. "This is our teammate?" growled one of them, a male named Krax. "I have seen hatchlings with more presence than this creature." Sarah said nothing. She simply adjusted her bag and followed the group to their assigned barracks, her face carefully neutral despite the whispers and pointed looks from every direction. She had expected this. Earth's intelligence briefings had warned her that humans were viewed as inferior throughout most of the coalition, their planet considered a backwater, their admission to the alliance purely political. The first week confirmed every prejudice. Physical training began each day at dawn, and Sarah struggled with exercises that other cadets completed easily. The Academy's gravity setting was calibrated to coalition standard, which meant 1.3 times Earth normal. Every step felt like wading through thick mud, every movement required twice the effort. While Corvani cadets performed their warm-up sprints, Sarah labored to keep pace, her lungs burning, her legs trembling. "Pathetic," announced Instructor Vrath during morning formation. He circled Sarah like a scavenger bird, his crimson scales catching the light. 20 laps around the training field. That is the minimum requirement. You have completed 7 and already you look ready to collapse. "I will finish, sir," Sarah gasped, sweat dripping down her face. "Will you?" Vrath leaned closer, his breath hot against her face. "I have trained warriors for 300 cycles, human. I know weakness when I see it. You do not belong here." The other cadets watched in silence. Some looked sympathetic, most looked indifferent, but none spoke in her defense. Speaking against an instructor was forbidden, but more than that, defending a human would mark them as weak by association. Sarah finished her laps, though it took her nearly an hour. By the time she stumbled across the finish line, the other cadets had already moved to combat drills. She reported to the training ring, her muscles screaming, and was immediately paired against a Breketh named Torg for hand-to-hand assessment. Torg stood 9 feet tall, his body composed of living stone that could withstand plasma fire. He looked down at Sarah with something approaching pity. "I will try not to hurt you too badly, human." The match lasted exactly 12 seconds. Torg's opening move, a simple grab meant to immobilize his opponent, caught Sarah's arm with the force of a hydraulic press. She had trained in multiple martial arts on Earth, had earned black belts in 3 disciplines, but none of that mattered when facing an opponent whose casual strength exceeded anything human muscles could produce. He lifted her off the ground effortlessly, held her suspended for a moment to demonstrate total dominance, then set her down gently. "Submit," he said not unkindly. "I submit," Sarah replied, her arm already bruising from his grip. Vrath marked something on his data pad, his expression satisfied. Next pairing. The days blurred together. Sarah woke before dawn, trained until her body gave out, studied tactical manuals until late into the night, and endured constant reminders that she did not belong. The academic courses proved easier. Humans excelled at theoretical learning, at pattern recognition and strategic thinking. But the academy valued physical prowess above intellectual capability. A warrior who could think but not fight was considered useless. On the 15th day, during a live-fire exercise in the virtual combat arena, Sarah's squad faced a simulated enemy force in urban terrain. The scenario required coordinating across multiple positions while under heavy fire, and Training Group 7 had been performing well until the simulation adapted, introducing enemies that flanked their position. "Chin, secure the eastern corridor," barked Krax, who had assumed squad leadership through sheer physical intimidation. Sarah moved immediately, her lighter frame allowing her to navigate the rubble-strewn street faster than her larger teammates. She reached the corridor entrance and took position behind a barrier, her training rifle raised. The simulation enemies appeared, holographic but programmed to register hits with painful electrical shocks. Sarah fired in controlled bursts, her marksmanship training from Earth serving her well. She hit 3 targets before the 4th enemy flanked her position from a hidden doorway. The electrical shock dropped her to her knees, the training rifle clattering from her hands. The simulation registered her as casualties, and she was forced to remain prone while her squad completed the exercise without her. "Disappointing," Vrath announced during the debrief. Chin failed to check her perimeter, allowing enemy penetration. This error would have cost lives in actual combat. "Sir, the enemy used a concealed entrance that wasn't marked on our tactical maps," Sarah said carefully, knowing contradiction was dangerous but feeling compelled to explain. "Excuses?" Vrath cut her off. "A true warrior adapts to unexpected threats. You lack the instincts necessary for combat. Your admission to this academy was a mistake that I intend to correct." That evening, Sarah sat alone in the barracks common area, reviewing her performance metrics on a data pad. Every category showed her ranking at the bottom of Training Group 7. Physical endurance, 47th percentile among all cadets. Combat effectiveness, 32nd percentile. Tactical assessment, 78th percentile, her only respectable score, but not enough to compensate for her other deficiencies. "You should leave before they break you," said a voice behind her. Sarah turned to find Zara, one of the Zentran cadets, watching her with luminescent eyes that shifted through colors indicating concern. Zentrans were an empathic species, capable of sensing emotional states, and Zara had been one of the few cadets who treated Sarah with any kindness. "I cannot leave," Sarah replied simply. "Why not?" "There is no shame in recognizing when a path is not meant for you. The academy destroys those who are not suited for it, and you are suffering every day." "I have my reasons." Zara's skin pulsed with colors indicating frustration. "You are the most stubborn creature I have ever encountered. Fine. Suffer if you must. But know that Vrath is preparing a formal dismissal recommendation. I overheard him discussing it with Lieutenant Kell. They plan to present it to the Academy Board at the end of this month." Sarah felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. "Thank you for warning me. Will it change anything?" "No." 3 days later, everything changed. An emergency alert screamed through the Academy's communication system at 0300 hours, jolting every cadet from sleep. Sarah dressed quickly, her heart pounding as she joined the chaos of cadets rushing to assembly points. Commander Vrath appeared on the main view screen, his expression grave. "All cadets, report to your designated briefing rooms immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. We have a critical situation developing." Training Group 7 assembled in Briefing Room Delta, where Lieutenant Kell waited with tactical displays already activated. The holographic projection showed a research station orbiting a distant moon, its systems flickering with damage indicators. 40 minutes ago, the synthesis research facility transmitted a distress signal. Kell began, his gravelly voice filling the room. "The station has been seized by an unknown hostile force. 73 personnel are trapped inside, including 12 coalition scientists working on classified weapons projects. A rescue team is being assembled, and due to the shortage of available combat units in this sector, advanced cadets are being deployed as support personnel. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This was real. People were in danger, and they were sending partially trained cadets to help rescue them. Training Group 7 will join the rescue force, Kel continued. You will be assigned to Beta Team, responsible for securing the station's lower decks and providing evacuation routes for rescued personnel. This is a live combat situation. You may face armed resistance. You may be injured or killed. Anyone who feels unable to perform this duty may request reassignment to support roles now, without prejudice. Silence filled the room. No cadet wanted to be labeled a coward, even if fear was entirely rational. Good, Kel nodded. Transport departs in 60 minutes. Gear up. Full combat loadout. Move. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah drew her equipment from the armory, combat armor scaled down to fit her smaller frame, a plasma rifle that felt heavy in her hands, ammunition packs, medical supplies, and a combat knife that seemed more symbolic than practical. She checked every piece of gear 3 times, her military training from Earth taking over despite her trembling hands. In the transport ship, strapped into acceleration seats that were too large for her body, Sarah found herself next to Krax. The massive Corvani checked his weapon with practiced efficiency, his 4 arms moving in coordinated precision. Try not to die immediately, human, he said without looking at her. It would be inconvenient to explain why we brought dead weight on this mission. I will do my job, Sarah replied quietly. Your job is to stay out of our way and not get captured. If fighting starts, let those of us who are actual warriors handle it. Sarah said nothing. She had learned that arguing with Corvani pride was futile. Instead, she closed her eyes and controlled her breathing, using techniques she had learned years ago during much different training that none of these cadets knew about. The research station loomed ahead, a massive structure of interconnected modules that bristled with sensor arrays and defensive systems, most of which were now dark or damaged. The transport pilot maneuvered carefully, avoiding debris fields that suggested violent conflict. Beta Team, you are clear for docking at Port 7, crackled the voice of the mission commander. Proceed with caution. We have no intelligence on enemy numbers or capabilities. Assume all personnel are hostile until verified otherwise. The docking clamp engaged with a metallic thud that reverberated through the transport. Pressure equalized, seals locked, and the access hatch hissed open to reveal a darkened corridor beyond. Emergency lighting cast everything in red, and the air smelled of burned electronics and something else, something organic and unpleasant. Training Group 7 moved into the station in tactical formation, weapons raised, senses alert. The Corvani took point positions, their superior strength and armor making them natural vanguards. The Breketh provided heavy support, their stone bodies serving as mobile cover. The Zentrans used their enhanced sensory capabilities to detect threats. And Sarah, as always, brought up the rear, trying to stay useful while not being a liability. They advanced through 3 sections without encountering resistance, finding only abandoned workstations and signs of hasty evacuation. Blood stains marked several walls, dark against the metal, suggesting violence had occurred here recently. Beta Team, we have movement in Section 7, reported one of the Zentrans, his skin flashing warning colors. Multiple heat signatures approximately 40 meters ahead, behind the sealed blast door. Krax made a hand signal and the team took defensive positions. He approached the door control panel, attempting to override the lock. The panel sparked, clearly damaged or sabotaged. Breaching required, he announced. Torg, you are up. The massive Breketh stepped forward, positioning himself before the blast door. He drew back one boulder-like fist and struck the door with enough force to dent reinforced steel. A second strike buckled the frame. A third tore the door partially from its mounting. Through the gap, Sarah could see movement, shadows shifting in the darkness beyond. Then everything went wrong. The shadows resolved into armed figures wearing combat armor marked with symbols Sarah did not recognize. They opened fire immediately, energy bolts screaming through the gap in the door, forcing Beta Team to scatter for cover. Contact! Contact! Krax shouted into his communicator. We are under fire, Section 7. Enemy forces are organized and heavily armed. Sarah pressed herself against a support pillar as plasma bolts superheated the air around her. This was nothing like training simulations. The smell of ozone, the deafening crack of energy weapons, the real possibility of death, it overwhelmed her senses. She saw one of the Zentrons take a hit, his luminescent skin flashing in pain as he fell. "Return fire," Krax ordered, and the Corvani cadets responded with disciplined bursts from their weapons. But the enemy had superior position, firing from protected cover while Beta Team remained exposed in the corridor. "We need to fall back," shouted one of the Breketh. "We are outgunned." "Negative." Krax refused to retreat, his pride overriding tactical sense. "We push forward." Sarah's mind raced. They were pinned down, taking casualties, and Krax's stubbornness was going to get them all killed. She looked around desperately, analyzing their situation with the training that had nothing to do with the Galactic Military Academy. There, above them, a maintenance access shaft, barely visible in the shadows. Too small for Corvani or Breketh, but possibly large enough for a human. She made her decision. Without asking permission, Sarah slung her rifle and scrambled toward the access shaft, using damaged equipment as handholds. Energy bolts cracked past her, one close enough that she felt its heat, but she kept climbing. "Chin, what are you doing?" Krax shouted. "Get back here." Sarah ignored him. She reached the access shaft, pried open the grating and pulled herself inside. The shaft was cramped, dark, and lined with sharp edges that tore at her uniform. She crawled forward, using the emergency lighting visible through ventilation grates to orient herself. Behind and below, she could still hear the firefight, the shouts of her teammates, the relentless crack of weapons fire. The shaft led deeper into Section 7, bypassing the blast door entirely. Sarah emerged in a storage area behind enemy lines, dropping silently to the floor. Through a doorway she could see the enemy positions, roughly 12 hostiles focused entirely on the corridor where Beta Team was pinned down. Her hands shook as she raised her plasma rifle. She was one human, barely trained, facing combat-hardened enemies. This was insane. This was suicide. But her teammates were dying, and she was the only one in position to do anything about it. Sarah took a breath, steadied her aim, and opened fire on the enemy's exposed flank. The element of surprise gave her perhaps 3 seconds before they realized what was happening. In those 3 seconds she dropped 2 hostiles and wounded a third. Then they turned toward her, and Sarah knew she had just made herself the primary target. But those 3 seconds were enough. Krax and the other Corvani, seeing the enemy distracted, pushed through the damaged blast door. Caught between 2 fire teams, the enemy formation collapsed. The battle lasted another 90 seconds of chaos, noise, and violence before the last hostile fell. Silence crashed over Section 7 like a physical weight. Sarah leaned against a wall, her rifle still raised, her whole body trembling with adrenaline. Krax appeared in the doorway, his crimson scales scorched from plasma fire, one of his 4 arms hanging limp from injury. He stared at Sarah for a long moment, his yellow eyes unreadable. Then he nodded once, a gesture of respect that Sarah had never expected to receive from him. "You saved us, human," he said simply. "I was wrong about you." Before Sarah could respond, a new voice cut through the darkness, cold and mechanical. "Intruder alert. Unauthorized personnel detected in restricted area. Initiating security protocols." Red lights began flashing throughout Section 7. Heavy blast doors slammed shut at every exit, trapping Beta Team inside. And from hidden panels in the walls, automated defense turrets emerged, their targeting lasers painting red dots across every member of the team. "Beta Team, report status." The mission commander's voice crackled through their communicators, distorted by interference. Krax tried to respond, but only static answered. They were cut off, trapped, and facing weapons that would shred them in seconds. Sarah's eyes darted around the room, searching desperately for any solution, and landed on a security terminal near the back wall. It was still active, screen glowing with Coalition security protocols. She ran toward it, plasma rifle forgotten, as the automated voice began its final countdown. Security breach confirmed. Lethal countermeasures authorized. Engaging in 5, 4, 3. Sarah's fingers flew across the terminal interface, but it was locked, protected by biometric scanners that required proper authorization. The scanner light pulsed red, denying access. 2. In desperation, Sarah pressed her hand against the scanner, knowing it was futile, knowing no human from Earth would possibly have clearance for a classified Coalition research facility. The scanner light turned green. A pleasant chime sounded. And a voice announced, "Identity confirmed. Welcome Agent Chin. Clearance level, Omega Black. Full system access granted." The automated countdown stopped. The defense turrets withdrew back into their hidden panels. And every member of Beta Team turned to stare at Sarah Chin, the weak human recruit who somehow possessed security clearance that exceeded that of most coalition admirals. Sarah's hand remained on the scanner, her mind racing, trying to find some explanation that would not reveal everything. But Krax was already approaching, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning understanding. "Who are you really?" he demanded. Before Sarah could answer, the terminal screen flickered and a new message appeared. Emergency protocol activated. Vault access required. Agent Chin, proceed to level 9 immediately. Time critical. And Sarah knew her carefully maintained cover, the weeks of being dismissed as weak and inadequate, the mission that had required her to endure mockery and discrimination. All of it was about to unravel because of a vault that only she could open. The vault opens, the silence in Section 7 stretched like a physical thing, broken only by the hum of active terminals and the labored breathing of wounded cadets. Sarah Chin stood frozen at the security console, her hand still pressed against the scanner, while Training Group 7 stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to betrayal. Krax recovered first, his forearms tensing as he approached her with deliberate steps. "Omega Black clearance," he said slowly, his voice dangerously quiet. "That is higher than Commander Vrath. Higher than the Academy Director. Higher than most Coalition Council members." His yellow eyes narrowed. "You are no simple cadet." Sarah withdrew her hand from the scanner, her mind calculating options with the speed that came from years of intelligence training. She could lie, claim it was a system error, but the evidence was too clear. She could run, but where would she go in a sealed research station surrounded by her own team? Or she could trust them with a fraction of the truth and hope it was enough. "I am exactly what I appear to be," Sarah said carefully. "A human cadet at the Galactic Military Academy. But I am also other things." "What other things?" demanded one of the Zentrans, his skin flashing angry orange. "Have we been training alongside a spy? An infiltrator?" "An insurance policy," Sarah replied. She gestured at the terminal screen where the urgent message still pulsed. "This facility, this attack, it is not what it seems. The personnel trapped here are not just scientists. This station conducts classified research into weapons that could destabilize the entire coalition. And someone just tried to steal that research." Torg, the massive Breketh, shifted his weight, creating small cracks in the floor beneath his feet. "You knew this attack was coming. You knew and you said nothing." "No," Sarah shook her head firmly. "I knew this facility existed. I knew it represented a potential security risk. That is why someone like me was placed in the academy, positioned where I could respond if something went wrong. But I did not know about this attack. If I had, I would have prevented it." Krax's mandibles clicked in frustration. "You have been lying to us for weeks. Pretending to be weak, incompetent, barely capable. Was it all an act?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I am weak compared to you. My physical limitations are real. I barely passed the academy entrance requirements because humans are not built for combat against species like yours. But my value is not measured in muscle mass or how much gravity I can endure. My value is in what I know, what I can access, and what I can do when conventional warriors fail." The terminal chimed again, more insistent. "Agent Chin, time critical. Vault access required in 14 minutes. Failure to comply will result in automatic containment protocols." "What vault?" Zara asked, her empathic senses clearly overwhelmed by the emotional chaos in the room. "What is down on level 9? Sarah hesitated, then made her decision. These cadets had fought beside her, bled beside her, and now their lives were entangled with hers. They deserved some measure of truth. This research station has been developing next-generation weapons based on dark matter manipulation. The vault on level 9 contains prototypes and data cores that could allow any faction to build weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. The attack on this station was not random piracy. It was a coordinated strike to access that vault. "And only you can open it," Krax said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "That is why you are here. You are the fail-safe." "One of several," Sarah admitted. "But yes, in this sector, I am the only one with proper authorization. If the vault is compromised, if the wrong people access those weapons, millions could die." Torg crossed his massive arms. "Then we have a problem. The enemy controls most of this station. We are cut off from the main rescue force. We have wounded teammates and limited ammunition. How exactly do you propose we reach level 9? Sarah turned back to the terminal, her fingers moving across the interface with practiced efficiency. Security feeds appeared on screen, showing the station's current status. What she saw made her blood run cold. The enemy forces were not random mercenaries or pirates. They wore the distinctive armor of the Kelthros Syndicate, a criminal organization known for selling weapons to the highest bidder regardless of consequences. More concerning, they were systematically moving through the station toward level 9, eliminating resistance with brutal efficiency. The main rescue force was pinned down on the upper decks, unable to advance. In 12 minutes, the Syndicate would reach the vault entrance. In 14 minutes, if Sarah had not accessed the vault herself, automated containment protocols would flood level 9 with radiation, destroying everything including any personnel still inside. The primary access route is blocked, Sarah said, studying the schematics. The Syndicate has positioned heavy weapons at every major intersection. But there is a secondary route through the environmental systems. It is unmapped, not included in standard station blueprints. How do you know about it? Asked one of the Corvani. Because I helped design the security protocols for this facility 3 years ago, before I was assigned to the Academy. Sarah pulled up a hidden schematic that required her Omega Black clearance to access. This maintenance tunnel runs parallel to the main structure. It is narrow, difficult, and parts of it are not pressurized. But it leads directly to level 9. Krax studied the route, his tactical mind already analyzing the challenges. Narrow means none of the Breketh can fit. Difficult means the Zentrans will struggle with physical obstacles. And unpressurized means we need environmental suits. There are emergency suits in the storage locker. Sarah pointed to a location on the map. But you are correct about the size limitations. This route can only accommodate myself and perhaps 2 Corvani at most. Unacceptable, Torg rumbled. We do not divide our forces further. We do not have a choice, Sarah countered, her voice hardening with authority that surprised even herself. The wounded need medical attention. Someone must hold this position and maintain communication with the rescue force. And someone must reach that vault before the Syndicate does. We split into 2 teams. Those who can fit in the tunnel come with me. Everyone else defends this position and guides the main rescue force toward our location once they break through. The team exchanged glances, the hierarchy of the Academy suddenly meaningless in the face of real crisis. Finally, Krax nodded. I will accompany you. And Vexer. He gestured to one of the other Corvani, a female with darker scales and sharp tactical instincts. Zara stepped forward, her skin pulsing with determination. I am coming too. You heard the size restrictions? Krax began. I am Zentran. We can compress our bodies when necessary. It is painful but I can fit. Zara's eyes fixed on Sarah. And you will need someone with empathic senses. If we encounter enemies in close quarters, I can detect them before we stumble into an ambush. Sarah nodded gratefully. Get the environmental suits. We leave in 2 minutes. The emergency suits were designed for short-term use during hull breaches, not extended operations. They were uncomfortable, restrictive, and the helmet displays were calibrated for alien visual spectrums, making everything appear slightly distorted to Sarah's human eyes. But they would keep them alive in the unpressurized sections, and that was all that mattered. The entrance to the maintenance tunnel was hidden behind a false panel in the storage area. Sarah pried it open, revealing a circular passage barely 4 feet in diameter. The Corvani would have to crouch constantly, the Zentran would be compressed to her limits, and even Sarah would need to navigate carefully. Listen, she addressed the team staying behind. When the main rescue force breaks through, tell Commander Vrath everything you have seen here. Tell him about my clearance, about the vault, about the Syndicate. He needs to understand the real stakes. Torg placed one massive hand on her shoulder, gentle despite his strength. You have earned our respect today, Sarachin. Whatever else you are our teammate. Come back alive. The words carried weight that Sarah had not expected. For weeks, she had been the outsider, the weak human barely tolerated. Now, in the span of one crisis, she had become something else. Valued, trusted, necessary. It was not the mission parameters she had trained for, but it felt right nonetheless. The maintenance tunnel was worse than Sarah had anticipated. The passage twisted and turned at irregular angles, following the station's structural supports rather than any logical path. In the pressurized sections, the air was stale and hot, filled with the smell of recycled atmosphere and machine oil. In the unpressurized sections, marked by heavy bulkhead doors, they moved in eerie silence broken only by the sound of their own breathing inside the helmets. Krax led the way, his 4 arms useful for maintaining balance in the cramped space. Vexer followed, her plasma rifle slung across her back, a cutting torch in her hands for any obstacles they might encounter. Zara came next, her body compressed to half its normal width, her skin flashing colors that indicated significant pain. And Sarah brought up the rear, constantly checking their position against the schematic displayed on her suit's wrist terminal. They had been crawling for 8 minutes when Sarah suddenly stopped, her entire body going rigid. "Wait," she whispered through the suit's communication system. "I sense something ahead." Emotions. Fear, anger, desperation. "The Syndicate?" Krax asked, his hand moving to his weapon. "No, these are different. Scattered. Hiding." Zara's colors shifted to uncertain yellow. "I think we have found survivors." They proceeded with weapons raised, following the tunnel around a sharp bend. Beyond, in a slightly wider section where 2 maintenance passages intersected, they found them. 4 research personnel huddled in environmental suits, their faces visible through helmet visors showing terror and relief in equal measure. One of them, an elderly Thalaxian with graying skin, nearly collapsed when he saw the cadets. "Thank the ancestors," he gasped. "We have been trapped here for hours. The Syndicate soldiers are everywhere. They executed anyone who resisted." "How many of you escaped?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside them. "Just us 4. Everyone else is either captured or dead. They are taking the scientists to level 9, forcing them to access the vault systems." Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. "They have scientists who can access the vault?" Dr. Velman, the head researcher. "They are forcing her to cooperate by threatening to kill her family. But she cannot actually open the vault. She only has authorization for the outer security layers, not the core systems." "How long before they realize she cannot help them?" The Thalaxian's eyes showed despair. "Maybe they already have. We heard weapons fire from below just before our communication systems were jammed." Sarah checked her chronometer. 6 minutes until automatic containment. The Syndicate was probably torturing information from the scientists right now, and when they failed to get what they wanted, they would start executing hostages. "We need to keep moving," she said, standing. "Can you 4 make it back the way we came? Follow this tunnel, take the 3rd left, and you will reach a sealed section where the rest of our team is holding position." "What about you?" the Thalaxian asked. "We are continuing to level 9. "That is suicide. The Syndicate has at least 20 soldiers down there and they have heavy weapons. 4 of you cannot possibly—" "We are not going to fight them," Sarah interrupted. "We are going to do something they will not expect." The rescue of the survivors cost them precious minutes, but leaving them would have been unconscionable. By the time Sarah's team reached the final section of maintenance tunnel, they had only 3 minutes before containment protocols activated. The tunnel ended at a service hatch that opened directly into the vault antechamber on level 9. Through a small observation port, Sarah could see the situation. The vault door itself was massive, composed of layered exotic materials designed to withstand anything short of a direct nuclear strike. Before it stood Dr. Velman, a Vidian scientist whose normally sleek appearance was marred by bruises and blood. Around her stood 15 Syndicate soldiers in full combat armor, their weapons trained on a dozen kneeling scientists who clearly were being used as hostages. The Syndicate commander, a scarred Corvani with cybernetic enhancements, was shouting at Dr. Velman. "You have wasted enough of my time, Doctor. Open the vault or I start executing your colleagues, starting with the young ones." "I cannot." Dr. Velman sobbed. "I do not have the clearance. Only Coalition intelligence can access the core systems." "Then you are useless to me." The commander raised his weapon toward a young researcher. Sarah made her decision. She opened the service hatch and stepped into the antechamber, hands raised, unarmed. 15 weapons immediately swung toward her, and the Syndicate commander's eyes widened in surprise at seeing a human. "I can open the vault," Sarah said clearly, her voice echoing in the sudden silence. The commander's weapon did not waver. "Who are you?" "Someone with Omega Black clearance. Someone who can give you what you want." Sarah walked slowly forward, each step calculated. Behind her, hidden in the tunnel, Krax, Vexer, and Zara waited for her signal. "But I have conditions." The commander laughed, a harsh sound. "You have no leverage to make conditions, human. I have the only leverage that matters. Without me you get nothing." The automatic containment activates in 90 seconds. This entire level floods with radiation that will kill everyone here and destroy the vault contents. Your mission fails, your employers are displeased, and you die slowly from radiation poisoning. She saw his eyes flick to a chronometer on his wrist, saw the calculation running through his mind. He needed her and they both knew it. "What are your conditions?" he asked. "You release the hostages. You let them leave this level. Then I open the vault, you take what you came for and everyone walks away alive." Done. He agreed too quickly, and Sarah knew he had no intention of keeping his word. The moment she opened the vault, he would kill everyone to eliminate witnesses. But she had never expected him to honor the agreement. She just needed him distracted. Release them, the commander ordered his soldiers. Let them go to the upper decks. As the hostages scrambled to their feet, Sarah approached the vault door. The interface was identical to the one she had accessed in Section 7, but this one had additional security layers. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner, and the system came to life. Identity verification, the automated voice announced. Place hand on scanner for full biometric analysis. 60 seconds until containment. Sarah kept her hand steady as the scanner read her palm print, her DNA, her neural pattern. The process seemed to take forever, each second ticking away while syndicate soldiers watched her with weapons ready. Identity confirmed. Agent Sarah Chin. Clearance level, Omega Black. Authorization granted. The vault door began to open, massive mechanisms unlocking with deep thudding sounds. The syndicate soldiers moved forward eagerly, their attention completely focused on the opening vault. Which was exactly what Sarah had been counting on. She dropped to the floor and shouted, "Now!" Krax and Vexor burst from the service tunnel, their weapons firing before the syndicate could react. In the confusion of the vault opening, with soldiers distracted and crowded together, the two Corvani cadets had perfect targets. Zara emerged behind them, not firing but instead releasing a telepathic scream that disoriented every empath-capable species in the room, including several syndicate soldiers. The firefight lasted 20 seconds of absolute chaos. Sarah rolled behind a support pillar as energy bolts cracked through the air. She had no weapon, no armor, but she had accomplished her purpose, creating the distraction that allowed her teammates to attack from an unexpected angle. The syndicate commander recovered quickly, rallying his remaining soldiers and laying down suppressing fire. But he had lost too many troops in the initial surprise, and now he faced Corvani warriors fighting with the desperation of those who knew they were outnumbered but refused to surrender. 30 seconds until containment. The commander made a decision. He grabbed Dr. Velman, using her as a shield, and backed toward the now open vault. Stand down or she dies. Sarah stood slowly, her mind racing. The vault was open. The containment protocol would activate regardless of who was inside. And she suddenly understood the commander's plan. He intended to enter the vault and seal himself inside with the research data. The vault's own shielding would protect him from the radiation while he accessed what he came for. It was desperate, possibly suicidal, but it might work. Unless someone stopped him. Sarah ran. She had no weapon, no advantage except surprise and the fact that the commander did not consider her a threat. She tackled him from the side, her human weight barely enough to stagger him, but sufficient to break his grip on Dr. Velman. The scientist scrambled away, and the commander backhanded Sarah with augmented strength that sent her crashing into a wall. Stars exploded across her vision. She felt ribs crack, tasted blood. But she had bought Krax the opening he needed. The Corvani cadet fired once, precisely, his plasma bolt catching the commander in the chest and dropping him instantly. 10 seconds until containment. Everyone out. Krax shouted, grabbing Sarah and hauling her toward the exit. Move. They ran, dragging wounded scientists, supporting each other as the vault door began closing automatically. The chronometer hit 0 just as they cleared the threshold into the upper level. Behind them, level 9 flooded with deadly radiation, sealing the vault and everything around it in contaminated death. Sarah collapsed against a wall, her body screaming with pain, her breathing labored. But they had succeeded. The vault was secure. The syndicate's attempt had failed. And somehow, impossibly, they had all survived. Commander Vrath arrived with the main rescue force minutes later, his expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something approaching respect as he surveyed the scene. Krax gave him a full report, explaining everything about Sarah's clearance, her hidden role, the vault, the syndicate's objective. Vrath listened in silence, then approached Sarah where she sat being treated by medical personnel. He studied her for a long moment, his yellow eyes unreadable. "I owe you an apology, Cadet Chin," he said formally. "I judged you by physical standards alone and failed to recognize your true value. That was my error, not yours." Sarah managed a pained smile. "I am still weak compared to you, Commander. That has not changed." "Strength takes many forms," Vrath replied. "You have proven that today." He paused, then added, "When you recover, we will discuss your continued placement at the Academy. Someone with your clearance level and capabilities should perhaps receive specialized training rather than standard courses." With respect, sir, I need to remain in standard courses. My mission requires that I maintain my cover as an unremarkable cadet. Vratha's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. After today, unremarkable will be difficult to maintain. He was right. As Sarah was carried to the medical transport, she saw the way the other cadets looked at her now. Not with contempt or dismissal, but with curiosity, respect, and wariness. The weak human had opened a vault that protected weapons of mass destruction. The fragile Earthborn had authorization that exceeded their commanders. She was no longer invisible or ignorable. Krax approached as the medics loaded her onto a stretcher. Your secret is not as secret anymore, he observed. No, Sarah agreed. But perhaps that is not entirely bad. Sometimes being underestimated is useful. Other times being respected is more valuable. Which do you prefer? Sarah considered the question as pain medication began dulling the sharp edges of her injuries. I prefer being alive and having teammates who trust me. The rest is just tactics. Krax's expression softened in the way Corvani showed approval. You are a strange creature, Sarah Chin. Weak and strong simultaneously. I look forward to training beside you, however much longer your mission keeps you at the academy. As the transport lifted off, carrying them away from the research station, Sarah closed her eyes and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Her cover was compromised, yes. The academy would treat her differently now, certainly. But she had accomplished her primary objective, protecting coalition secrets and preventing catastrophic weapons from falling into the wrong hands. And perhaps, unexpectedly, she had gained something else. Respect. Camaraderie. The knowledge that strength came in many forms and humans, despite their physical limitations, had their own kind of power. The Galactic Military Academy would never again dismiss a human recruit as merely fragile. Sarah Chin had made certain of that. And somewhere in Coalition Intelligence Headquarters, in offices buried deep beneath secure facilities, analysts were already updating their assessment of humanity's strategic value. The fragile Earthborn had opened more than just a vault. She had opened minds, challenged assumptions, and proven that in the vast diversity of the Galactic Coalition, humans had a place not despite their weaknesses, but because of how they turned those weaknesses into unexpected strengths. As sleep claimed her, Sarah smiled. The mission was far from over, but today had been a good beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities to show the galaxy what humanity could offer. And she would be ready.